"You're the most useless child we have," my mother said across the Christmas table. I set the velvet ring box by my plate and answered, "Then stop calling me when you need money." The room froze. Forks hovered in midair. The angel on the tree leaned a little left, like even she didn't want to watch. I'm Linda, 32, Senior Marketing Coordinator, the invisible middle my family trained me to be. I'd come to Maple Street with two gifts, a hand-bound photo album I spent 40 hours restoring, and the news that David had asked me to marry him. Cinnamon and coffee drifted from the kitchen, but all I could taste was metal. Michael adjusted his designer watch. Karen smirked into a navy suit that probably cost my rent. My dad's eyes went soft. He always tries. My mother's stayed hard ruby sweater bright enough to sting. I had planned a gentle announcement over pie, a toast to peace. Instead, she cut first like she always did, and I finally bled out the truth. Before I continue, tell me where you're watching from. And hit like and subscribe if you've ever been betrayed by family. I thought this would be the year I finally earned her pride. I didn't know the crack in our house started decades ago and was about to split the whole table in half. The crack didn't start at Christmas. It started years earlier in the small brick house on Maple Street where favoritism was the air we breathed. Michael, the golden boy, Karen, the baby princess, and me, the one in the middle, the one who had to work twice as hard just to be noticed. My earliest memories are stacked like snapshots, Michael getting a B on his science test, and Dad ruffling his hair like he'd won a Nobel Prize. Karen throwing a tantrum so loud the neighbors peeked out their windows, and Mom laughing. "She's just spirited." Me, I brought home straight A's and trophies that glittered under the hallway light, and Mom would say, "That's what we expect from you, Linda. Don't get cocky." I learned young that love in our house wasn't unconditional, it was rationed. Michael got it in applause, Karen in indulgence. I got it in small nods, clipped approval, or worse, silence. By high school, I'd made it my mission to buy their affection in other ways. I worked part-time at the grocery store stuffing bags while my classmates went to football games. Every dollar I saved, I turned into offerings. Flowers for Mother's Day, a silver bracelet for Mom's birthday. Thoughtful Christmas gifts wrapped in paper. I picked out weeks in advance. Michael and Karen. They'd swing by the mall on December 23rd, grab whatever was on sale, and still walk away with the longest hugs and the biggest smiles. The smell of my childhood is a mix of bleach and burnt toast, the 2 cents that clung to my hands after long shifts at the store and rushed breakfasts before school. I'd slip the grocery receipts into a shoebox under my bed, prove to myself that I was contributing, that I mattered. At the same time, Michael was showing off his Letterman jacket at dinner, and Karen was rehearsing lines for the spring play. Guess who Mom bragged about at church? Not me. There's one memory that won't leave me. I must have been 15. I had saved up from tutoring kids after school, every crumpled bill stuffed into a mason jar. On Mom's birthday, I bought her a small pearl pendant. I can still feel the satin box in my pocket, still see her expression when she opened it. A polite smile. A soft, "Thank you, dear." Then Karen bounded into the room with a last-minute gift cheap body spray still in the drugstore bag. Mom squealed, hugged her, said, "You always know just what I like." I stood there holding the empty box invisible again. I told myself it didn't matter, that one day I'd prove them all wrong with my success, with a career that meant something. But the truth. Every time I was overlooked, something inside me cracked a little more. And I didn't know then that those cracks would come back louder than a slammed door at a Christmas table lit with gold. College was supposed to be my escape, a clean slate, far from Maple Street, far from the measuring stick that always seemed just out of reach. I picked marketing because I loved the blend of strategy and storytelling. The idea that you could shape how people felt not by shouting, but by connecting, by creating something they remembered. The day I told my family, my major mom's face collapsed like I'd confessed to a crime. "Marketing," she said, her voice sharp. "That's not a real career, Linda. That's playing with pretty pictures. Why can't you be more like Michael or Karen?" The words branded me. Not smart enough, not noble enough, not enough. I graduated with honors, clutching a diploma that felt heavier than stone. I thought maybe this would finally earn me a smile, a flicker of pride. Instead, Mom's first question at the ceremony was, "So, when are you going back for something serious?" Still, I kept pushing. I found a small firm downtown, stayed late, took projects no one else wanted. Every small win I carried like a trophy back home. Every phone call about a new client or a successful campaign ended the same way. That's nice, dear. Did I tell you Michael's article got published in a journal? Karen just won another case. Their triumphs were fireworks, mine sparklers in the rain. The imbalance wasn't just emotional, it was physical. I was the one hauling boxes when my parents moved into their new house, the one painting walls while Michael texted patients and Karen juggled depositions. I dog-sat their German Shepherd even though my allergies left me sneezing through the night. I stayed in the hospital waiting room during Dad's surgery, clutching cold coffee while Mom fretted, but when it was over, she lectured me for not giving Michael and Karen enough updates. Every sacrifice blurred into the next until I couldn't tell where my life ended and their needs began. I thought if I filled the cracks with effort, maybe the house wouldn't collapse. Maybe one day Mom would look at me the way she looked at them, eyes lit, voice warm, shoulders soft with pride. But the more I gave, the more invisible I became. I can still see the shoebox under my bed stuffed with old receipts and cards I'd sent for every holiday. Proof that I tried, that I never stopped trying, that I believed one day it would be enough. I didn't know it then, but those years weren't just building my resume. They were building pressure like a hairline fracture deep inside concrete, silent, hidden, waiting. And on that Christmas night, with a ring box in my hand and a photo album, no one cared to open the fracture split wide. Dinner that Christmas looked perfect, at least on the surface. My mother's china glowed under the chandelier, the silverware aligned with military precision, and a fire cracked in the hearth like something out of a postcard. The turkey's skin shone bronze steam curling upward as Dad carved the first slice. From the kitchen drifted cinnamon sage and the faint metallic tang of coffee warming too long on the burner. But under the hum of conversation, I felt the old imbalance thrumming the same silent current that had carried me since childhood. Michael lounged at one end, phone buzzing on the table, despite Mom's no devices rule, an exception always made for him. He bragged about a surgery, the words cutting edge and groundbreaking slipping off his tongue like blessings. Karen sat near Grandma, her navy suit, crisp nails lacquered, recounting a courtroom victory. Their voices filled the space like they owned the air, pulling laughter nods and praise in every direction. I sat between my youngest cousin and the empty chair where my grandfather used to sit, quietly folding my napkin into smaller and smaller squares until it looked like a paper crane. Every laugh that skipped across the table skipped right over me. Then Grandma, bless her, tilted her head. "And you, Linda, are you still at that marketing place downtown?" I straightened. My heart thumped against my ribs, but I lifted my chin. "Yes, I am. Actually, I just got promoted to senior coordinator. I'll be leading my own team now." Aunt Susan clapped her hands softly. Dad's eyes softened into pride. For half a second, I let myself breathe. Maybe, just maybe, this was it. Then Mom's voice cut clean through. "Linda still thinks making pretty pictures counts as a career," she said, buttering her roll without looking at me. "I keep telling her to go back for something substantial like nursing or teaching, something real." The words landed heavier than the china plates. Heat climbed my neck. I tried to steady my voice. "It's not just pretty pictures, Mom. It's strategy. It's analysis. And I earned this." She shrugged, uninterested, turning back toward Michael. "Did you tell them about the conference in Chicago?" The conversation swerved like I'd never spoken. My little announcement dissolved in the clinking of glasses and Karen's booming laugh. My throat ached with unshed words. But I had one more card to play. The thought of it hummed in my chest like electricity. My pulse raced as I reached into my purse, brushing my fingers across the velvet box. The ring inside felt like an anchor, proof that someone somewhere saw me. Proof that my life mattered. "Actually," I said, standing a little straighter, forcing my voice over the chatter, "there's something even bigger I want to share." Every head turned. For the first time all evening, silence blanketed the table. Forks hovered midair. Even the fire seemed to hush. I opened the box. The diamond caught the chandelier's light, sharp as ice. "David proposed," I said. "We're engaged." At first, there was a pause so sharp it rang louder than any cheer could have. Then, a polite scattering of voices broke the silence. "Congratulations!" Aunt Susan said, her smile gentle but cautious. Grandma reached over to squeeze my hand, her palm soft, steady. Dad's face lit with relief, his glass already lifting, but the others, Karen's lips twitched into a smirk. Michael barely looked up from his phone. And Mom's expression didn't move at all. Her eyes flicked to the ring, then to me, then back to her plate as though I'd set down something unremarkable like salt or pepper. "When did this happen?" Karen asked, voice tight. "In October," I said. My throat felt dry. "We went hiking in the mountains and David proposed at the Overlook. It was perfect." October. Mom's tone was sharp enough to slice meat. "So you've been engaged for 2 months, and you're just telling us now I wanted to share it in person as a family," I said. "Well, that's just typical of you, Linda. Always secretive, always keeping things to yourself. No wonder we never know what's going on in your life." The words landed like stones, one after another. My chest burned. "I'm not secretive, Mom. I call every week. I wanted this moment to be special." Michael finally asked, "What does David do again, though I'd told him 3 times? "He's a high school English teacher." Mom repeated the word as though it were dirt. "A teacher. Well, I suppose that's stable employment at least." The way she said it flat, disappointed, made the ring in my hand feel smaller, like a toy from a gumball machine. "He's wonderful," Grandma said firmly. "You'll see when you meet him." Karen laughed without humor. "I just hope he knows what he's getting into. Linda's always been the difficult one." "I'm not difficult," I snapped, but my voice cracked. Mom didn't miss a beat. "She's right. You've never made things easy, Linda. Not on yourself, not on us." The table fell into an uneasy silence. Even Michael looked uncomfortable. My father cleared his throat, his glass raised higher. "To Linda and David. May you be happy together." A few reluctant glasses clinked. Karen's stayed glued to her phone. Mom didn't bother to lift hers, and then she looked me dead in the eye. "You know, Linda, I have to be honest. I worry about David. What kind of man proposes to you?" The air vanished. The room froze, the tick of the grandfather clock suddenly unbearable. "What do you mean?" I asked, though. My chest already knew. "You're 32. You live in that tiny apartment. You've never accomplished anything significant. You're the most useless child we have. I just hope David realizes what he's signing up for before it's too late." Forks clattered against china. My aunt's mouth dropped. My dad muttered my mother's name like a warning. Even Michael and Karen looked stunned. And me, I sat there with the ring box open, the diamond catching firelight, my hands trembling, my vision blurring. For years, I'd swallowed every insult, every comparison. But this time, something inside me cracked, not a hairline fracture, but a break loud enough to echo across generations. I didn't know yet what I was about to do, only that I couldn't keep swallowing it. The silence after my mother's words wasn't just awkward, it was suffocating. I could hear the faint hiss of the radiator, the scrape of Dad's fork against porcelain, the way my pulse pounded so loud it almost drowned out the Christmas carols drifting from the living room stereo. The air smelled of turkey and nutmeg, but in my mouth everything tasted metallic, like I'd bitten down on a coin. For 32 years, I'd let her words pin me down, let the comparisons hollow me out. Tonight, something different sparked inside. It wasn't just hurt anymore. It was clarity, a sharpness that cut through the fog I'd been living in since childhood. I stared at the ring box, still open in front of me. The diamond winked sharp steady, as if reminding me you don't belong to them anymore. You belong to yourself. Beside my mother's plate sat the photo album I'd wrapped for them, the one I'd spent weeks restoring. Hundreds of pictures, scanned water damage patched in Photoshop layout designed late at night while my eyes burned. I imagined her turning each page slowly, finally seeing me for the glue I'd been all along. Instead, she'd flipped past it in seconds, tossed it aside like junk mail. That album was me 40 hours of invisible labor bound into one object. And like me, it had been ignored. The truth pressed against my ribs, a weight I'd carried in silence for years. It wasn't just emotional, it was financial. $1,500 wired every month so her car wouldn't be repossessed. $3,000 last spring for Dad's surgery money I pulled from my own savings. $2,000 for Karen's bar exam fees because, as Mom had put it, she's already stressed enough, don't make her worry about money too. I even remembered the exact dates: September 15th, October 3rd, November 7th. Each transfer a paper cut that never healed, and I had answered every time. I thought about the nights I stayed late at the office, not out of ambition but necessity, because my paycheck was already spoken for before it hit my account. I thought about canceling trips with David, telling him we couldn't afford it when the truth was I couldn't stop bankrolling my family. I thought about watching friends sign mortgage papers while I paid down Michael's student loans in secret. Tonight, the whole stared back at me across the Christmas table in the form of my mother's smile, a smile that said, "You'll take it, you always do." Not anymore. I let my palm drift to my purse under the table fingers, brushing the smooth surface of my phone. No one noticed. Their eyes were locked anywhere but on me. That was fine. Let them ignore me one more minute. They'd hear me soon enough. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to throw the ring or storm out. That's what they expected, the difficult Linda, emotional, dramatic. No, my counterattack would be quiet, surgical, undeniable. Because the receipts lived in my banking app, neat rows of numbers I'd scrolled through 100 times in private. Tonight, those rows would speak louder than me. I drew a slow breath, steadying the tremble in my hands. The diamond on my finger caught the chandelier's light. For the first time in my life, I felt it wasn't just an ornament, it was a blade. And that was the moment I knew I wasn't powerless anymore. I was holding the knife. I slid my thumb across the phone screen beneath the table, the glow lighting up my lap. Line after line of transfers filled the display, each one a reminder of how deeply I had been mined. My stomach turned as I scrolled. $1,500, $3,000, $2,000. Over and over, the numbers stacking higher than the Christmas tree in the living room. I remembered the calls. Mom's voice, thin, desperate. "Linda, we're in a bind. Just until your father gets back on his feet. Or worse, the manipulative softness. You know you're the reliable one. We couldn't ask Michael, he's busy. Karen's already overwhelmed, and I, foolish and hungry for approval, had said yes. Again and again. The thing is, they never called it what it was. They called it help. They called it family. But it was theft, sanctioned, applauded, hidden behind smiles and Sunday dinners. I glanced at Mom across the table. She was busy complimenting Karen's new manicure, her laugh sharp and brittle. I studied her face the way you study a stranger's, searching for any trace of recognition, of gratitude. There was none. She looked exactly like she had the day she dismissed my college graduation, unimpressed, impatient, already looking past me. And something shifted. For the first time, I realized that nothing I ever gave her, time, money, achievements, would be enough, because she didn't want me to succeed. She wanted me small. She needed me invisible so her golden children could shine brighter. The album beside her plate mocked me, its ribbon still tied. My heart ached, but then hardened. That book wasn't for her anymore. It was for me, a record of what I'd held together while she tore me down. I closed my banking app and slipped the phone back into my purse, not because I was hiding, but because I was saving it. Timing mattered. If my mother taught me anything, it was how to perform for an audience. And tonight, she had given me one. My chest steadied, my breath slowed. The trembling in my hands faded, replaced by a calm I didn't recognize at first. It was power. Quiet, unshakable power. Across the table, Dad was still watching me, worry etched in the lines of his forehead. Grandma Eleanor sat straighter, her eyes sharper than they had been all evening, like she sensed something was coming. Even Karen's laughter had grown thinner, forced. The whole room felt like a stage, the air tight with expectation. I touched the ring once more, feeling the cold metal bite my skin. David's face flashed in my mind, the way he smiled when I told him I finally got promoted, the way he always said, "You don't need their approval, you never did." For years, I didn't believe him, but tonight, under the halo of that chandelier, I finally did. I wasn't their invisible middle anymore. I wasn't their ATM, their errand girl, their shadow. Not tonight. I lifted my head. My voice would come next, not in a scream, not in a sob, but in the kind of quiet that shakes walls. Because the blade was in my hands now, and I was ready to cut. I don't remember standing, but suddenly I was on my feet, the ring box still open in front of me. My chair scraped back against the hardwood floor, the sound loud enough to silence every side conversation. My mother tilted her head, half amused, half annoyed. "Sit down, Linda. Don't make a scene." I laughed, short, sharp, bitter. "A scene? You just called me useless in front of our entire family." "That's not a scene." Her eyes narrowed. "You're being dramatic. Families talk honestly." "If you can't take honesty, maybe honesty." My voice cut through hers. "Fine. Let's talk honestly." I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone, the screen glowing like a spotlight. For a beat, the only sound was the grandfather clock ticking in the hall. Then I scrolled, held the screen up, and let the numbers speak. September 15th, $1,500 to Patricia Walsh car payment. October 3rd, another $1,500. November 7th, $2,000 for Dad's surgery bills. December 19th, $500 again. Forks clattered against china. My Aunt Susan's face went pale. Uncle Frank muttered, "Jesus." I kept going, each line sharper than the last. Karen's bar exam, $2,000. Michael's student loans, $4,000 when his practice almost tanked. Do I need to keep reading, or is this honest enough for you? Mom Patricia's face drained of color, then flushed dark. "That's private," she hissed. "You don't need to drag our family business out in front of everyone." "Our family business," I snapped. "You had no problem announcing to the entire table that I'm the most useless child you have. But when the truth comes out that I've been bankrolling this family for years, that's suddenly private." Michael's jaw tightened. "Wait. You paid my loans. I thought you thought Mom and Dad covered it." "Of course you did, because she told me not to say a word. Said it would embarrass you. Said I should just consider it my contribution." Karen's face drained. "The bar exam fees? That was you." "Yes," I said flatly. "And do you know how many nights I skipped meals to make sure that check cleared? How many times I told David we couldn't save for a house because I was too busy saving this one?" The room erupted in whispers. My grandmother's eyes gleamed with something between sorrow and rage. Dad looked at my mother as though seeing her for the first time. Patricia slammed her napkin down. "Enough families help each other. That's what we do." "No," I said, my voice steady low. "What families do is support each other emotionally, celebrate each other's wins, stand together. What you do is take my money while telling me I'm worthless." For a moment, the only sound was my grandmother clearing her throat. Her voice, when it came, was iron. "Patricia, is this true?" Mom stammered. "She's exaggerating." She offered. I cut her off. "Offered? You begged. You cried. You called at midnight. You made me promise not to tell anyone. And I kept those promises year after year, thinking maybe if I carried everyone else's weight, you'd finally see me." My chest heaved, but my voice didn't shake. I looked straight into her eyes and said, "Not anymore." The silence that followed my words was thick enough to choke on. I could see it settling on every face at the table, pressing them into stillness. My mother's hands trembled against her wine glass, though she tried to hide it. Dad leaned forward, his voice low, controlled. "Patricia, is this true?" She bristled. "Robert, don't you dare." "Is it true?" He barked louder than I'd ever heard him. The entire room flinched. My mother's lips parted, but no words came. Grandma Eleanor's voice filled the gap. "I am ashamed of you," she said, her tone flat, surgical. "This girl has been carrying the weight of half this family while you've treated her like dirt. That's not just ungrateful, it's cruel." Mom's face contorted desperation breaking through her mask. "You don't understand, Mother. We were struggling. We needed help." "Struggling." My laugh was bitter. "You drove a car I paid for. You bragged about Michael's research trips while I drained my savings to cover the bills. You called me useless while my bank account bled for you. That's not struggling, Mom. That's stealing." Michael finally found his voice. Linda, I swear if I had known you didn't want to know, I snapped. None of you did. It was easier to let me be the safety net, the invisible one. As long as the checks cleared, why ask questions? Karen's eyes filled with tears, but she stayed silent. I turned to her anyway. And you. Do you have any idea what it felt like to watch you celebrate passing the bar, knowing I was the reason you could even take the exam? To sit there clapping while my own achievements got brushed aside? You called me difficult, Karen. Difficult. I call that convenient. The words hung in the air like smoke. Mom's voice finally cracked thin and shaky. You're twisting this. We always appreciated. I cut her off. Name one time you told me you were proud. Name one time you celebrated me the way you celebrate them. You can't, because it never happened. Aunt Susan shifted uncomfortably, but her eyes burned with sympathy. Uncle Frank muttered something about shame under his breath. My cousins avoided my gaze, suddenly fascinated by their plates. I placed my phone down in the center of the table screen, lit with rows of payments, proof glowing like neon. Here's the truth: for years you've had your golden children. And you've had your safety net. Tonight, the safety net is gone. The Bank of Linda is closed permanently. The words echoed. No one moved, no one dared. Mom's jaw worked, but nothing came out. For the first time in my life, she looked small, powerless. Dad exhaled slowly, shaking his head. Patricia, how could you? Her face crumpled, half anger, half fear. I was protecting us. I was doing what I had to. No, I said, my voice low final. You were protecting the illusion that Michael and Karen were untouchable, that I was disposable. But tonight, that illusion shatters. I pushed my chair back, the legs groaning against the floor. My hands were steady, now calmer than they'd ever been. I'm done carrying this family while being treated like it's failure. I won't sit here one more minute being humiliated in the house I helped keep standing. I slipped the ring box into my pocket, lifted my coat from the back of my chair, and looked around the table one last time. My father's face was gray with shame. Grandma's eyes glistened but proud. Michael looked stunned, Karen pale, and my mother, Patricia Walsh, queen of the table, sat speechless, her empire collapsing in front of her. When I reached the doorway, I turned back. My voice was quiet, but it carried. Remember this moment. Remember who really kept this family afloat. And remember who walked away when you called her useless. The chandelier light glinted off the untouched photo album as I left the room. Behind me, the table stayed frozen in silence. The night air hit me like a slap when I stepped outside. Snow had started falling again, soft flakes dissolving on my coat. The lights from Maple Street blurred through tears I didn't bother to wipe. For the first time in years, I wasn't rushing to answer a call to soothe a crisis, to play the invisible savior. I was walking away. By the time I reached my car, my phone was buzzing with missed calls. Mom, the screen glowed again and again. I let it ring until the cold metal of the door handle burned my palm. Not this time. When I finally got home, the apartment was dark except for the string of lights David had hung around the window. They glowed warm, steady like a heartbeat. I sank onto the couch coat, still on staring at the velvet box in my hand. For years, I thought approval from my family would make me whole. Tonight, I realized the opposite. Breaking free was the first real gift I'd ever given myself. David came back from Portland 2 days later. He found me in the same spot, tired, wrung out, but lighter somehow. You finally did it, didn't you? He whispered, pulling me close. I nodded into his chest. I told them everything. About the money, about the loans, about all of it. And then Mom called me useless. So I told her the truth. My laugh cracked, in front of everyone. He pulled back, studied me like I was brand new. That's not useless, Linda. That's brave. The days after Christmas were a blur of calls I didn't answer. Dad's messages were heavy with regret. Michael left a voicemail offering to pay me back. Karen's tone was defensive at first, then confused, then quiet. Even Mom's voice shifted from sharp to pleading to something almost fragile. But for the first time, I wasn't scrambling to fix it. I was letting them sit in the silence they created. At work, I noticed the change immediately. I walked into meetings taller, spoke without apology. My boss pulled me aside after a presentation. "You seem different," she said. "More focused. Keep it up. You're going places." It struck me cutting the cord to my family's endless needs hadn't just freed my bank account, it had freed me. Still at night, I caught myself replaying the Christmas table, the diamond in the chandelier light, my mother's face collapsing, the album left unopened. And I knew one truth clear as the snow outside they thought I'd regret it, but I didn't. 3 months later, the snow melted into spring, and I stood in a white dress at a historic inn outside the city. The guest list was small people who had earned the right to be there. David's parents. My grandmother Eleanor in the front row, her eyes proud and wet. Aunt Susan, who had called me every week since Christmas. A handful of friends who knew every scar in my story. Dad walked me down the aisle. His hand trembled against mine, but his voice was steady when he whispered, "I should have stood up for you sooner." "I'm proud of you, Linda." It was the first time I'd heard him say it out loud. It landed heavier than the bouquet in my arms. Michael came too. He stayed quiet most of the night, but before he left, he pressed an envelope into my hand. "It's not enough," he muttered, "but it's a start." Inside were repayment checks. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Karen showed up late, her smile thin. We spoke briefly, politely. Maybe that's all we would ever have, and maybe that was okay. Mom came as well. She looked polished perfect, every hair in place, but her usual commentary never came. When it was her turn to speak, she cleared her throat and said, "Only Linda, I was wrong. You're not useless. You never were. I hope you and David build a life full of joy." The words felt rehearsed, but real enough. I let them land without pushing for more. During the reception, Dad gave a speech that made my chest ache. Linda has always been the heart of this family, even when we didn't see it. David, you're marrying a woman who will move heaven and earth for the people she loves. Don't ever take her for granted. The room clapped, and for once, I didn't feel invisible. Later that night, I slipped away to breathe. In my bag, I still carried the photo album, the one that had been tossed aside on Christmas. I opened it under the soft glow of string lights. Page after page stared back birthdays, graduations, vacations where I was half out of frame, proof that I'd always been there even when no one noticed. I closed it gently, no bitterness left, only resolve. The album wasn't for them anymore. It was for me to remember that being unseen didn't mean I didn't exist. David found me, then slipped his arms around my waist as our song started inside. "No regrets," he whispered. "None," I said. And I meant it. They thought calling me useless would break me. Instead, it gave me the clarity to walk away to write my own ending. Have you ever had to set boundaries with your family when they took you for granted? Tell me in the comments. I want to know I'm not alone. And if this story spoke to you, hit like and subscribe. Because sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop giving to people who only take.